Hello, welcome to Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to do a raid review. Before we do that, Buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast?
Oh, on this podcast we talk about games. This is a little wild. Raid reviews are such a normal thing that is like now it's very different, right? So
Yeah.
A raid review is when we look at a raid from World of Warcraft. Both of us have been playing World of Warcraft for a long time. We've been raiding together for a long time. Once we get AOTC, which is ahead of the curve, which is sort of this not quite the ultimate version, but kind of maybe I would say the penultimate version of sort of moderately difficult dad level content that, we do, right? We then go through and we say, okay, what was the raid like for this patch? These are normally a review of one raid instance where we just go boss by boss by boss. We talk a little bit about the loot. We talk a little bit about the boss design, all of the rest of it. We kind of rank bosses and stuff like that. But this one is kind of insane because a bunch of stuff has changed, right? So number one, there are 4 raid instances that have taken place over the course of 12.0. So the first 2 instances that were open from day 1 of season 1 were the Voidspire and whatever the instance with the fucking Chimaera boss is called, right? Then 2 weeks after that, the March on Quel'danas premiered, continuing the story from the Voidspire into the future of the next, of this next raid. Then we had the Sporefall raid come in 12.0.7. So 6 weeks before the next patch, they release a new raid boss that we have successfully killed. And that's just like a wildly different structure than sort of we're used to. And then on top of all of this, the add-on apocalypse happened since the last time that we did a raid review, right? Which would have obviously been for Dimensius. It would have been for Manaforge Omega in the War Within, which obviously became the War Without for the purposes of going to Koresh. But since then, Weakauras completely discontinued its service. You can't make Weakauras anymore. DBM and a number of other just high profile add-ons all had pretty incredible sort of redesigns that were needed because of the nature of reducing the add-on kind of capability that was required for sort of World of Warcraft, which promised a new level of sort of rating that, people could have with add-ons not pulling so much of sort of the mechanical lift of sort of the fight for you. And that leaves us in a position where we are reviewing this raid under very complex sort of glasses. Anyway, I don't know. What do you think about all that?
Yeah. I realized that as we were loading this up that I had forgotten most of Voidspire. Just because it feels like we stopped bothering with it a long time ago, even though it wasn't that long ago. It just feels like it was long ago. And honestly, Chimeras in the Dream Rift I would have forgotten about if it wasn't such an easy, oh, we want a second boss, we'll just fucking do Dream Rift type of deal.
Yeah, and also Dream Rift had that important trinket that everybody wanted.
Yeah.
So
yeah, what was the other thing I was gonna say? Oh yeah, the only thing, the biggest impact to me of the Weakauras going away is that at least when the season launched, there wasn't an obvious way to get your trinkets into the inbuilt cooldown Weakauras. And if there is one, I just have to go find it. But I continually forget to pop my trinket cooldown because it's I don't have a big blaring sign that tells me that it's off cooldown. So that's been the biggest impact I think on me personally. But I also never used super complex Weakauras. I just kind of did mostly what the inbuilt tools that WoW provided has been doing, but for positioning stuff that I can't do as fine grained as I used to be able to do, which kind of is aggravating, but it's not a huge deal. But yeah, I have. It seems like these raids have been much easier, and I can't tell if that's because they simplified it for for Weakauras and like raid DBM type stuff reasons, or if it's also just these other compounding factors that we've had from the previous expansions where if you're delving aggressively, you're getting outfitted. Like I remember before we had the delves and before we had like easy PvE ways to get heroic track gear, it was a while before, like basically if I even got to all my gear in their max slots, it was like right when we were clearing the last boss of the raid. Whereas now I feel like I'm like halfway there by the time we even start seriously hitting progression. Just because I'm doing 4 to 5 delves a week when I'm building power. And so that has naturally brought down the difficulty of the raids because basically the people who care are doing that. And so our raid has a bunch of like everybody in the raid is coming to the raid more geared and more ready to go, which is naturally going to smooth out the curve.
Yeah. Yeah, the curve is really interesting on this one. I think, and I think a lot of people probably have this similar sort of theory of the case, which is that members of the raid are because they stripped add-ons away, right? They wanted to make sure that people were going to have an okay time in a world with sort of fewer capabilities. Like the words that I wanted to say were members of the raid have fewer capabilities, which I don't actually think that's true. Like that's not quite how it works, but that's what it sort of feels like, right? If you are going to nerf people by getting rid of big, powerful add-on suites that, they've been using to kind of trivialize certain aspects of raid content for a long time, then you also have to nerf the raids in order to kind of keep them, up with one another. And I probably would have said, and I think that this is true, that people overestimated the amount that add-ons were necessary to clearing to clearing kind of the raids, right? I think that people thought that they were going to be pushed harder into the ground than they ended up being pushed. And that's, that's interesting. That's pretty compelling to me. I like the add-on changes generally, and I also approached them a little bit uniquely because I never re-downloaded DBM. So I did the whole raid without DBM ever, which, Savadar, Frank, if you're listening, brother, is why I missed taunts all the time, okay? Because I never, ever had a taunt warning, because that kind of stuff was still up in DBM or whatever. And I think that is I don't know, I think that's interesting, but it was my own little like personal test to myself. I just wanted to see what it was like, if I kind of took them at their word that you don't need add-ons to do these fights, is that true? And the answer is yeah, basically.
That makes sense. And I feel like I don't know, I think that's a little misleading in the sense that yes, you can do it without an add-on, but there was an aspect that we also have, like, Sarian BM, where like he's, calling out, like in the, we'll get to the details of this later, but in Midnight Falls, right? Like calling out like the pattern of the memory game, right? Like having somebody who's making those calls out, for the team is I still think kind of necessary. I think that's a fine play pattern, but I do think it's like, and it would have been trivialized by a DBM, like if they could like capture that, I'm sure if DBM was still working, they'd like figure out a way to like flash the symbols in order up on the screen that way nobody had to actually like pay attention and do it. But it still, I think, requires a level of coordination, which was always the case, but I don't think it's the case that like, you can kind of just do it willing. I don't know. I don't know if I'm making a real point here, if I'm just kind of like slicing the bologna a little too thin. But I do think it would still require some coordination.
I think so. For instance, something that Wowhead posted an article of was Lura has a mechanic that, they only added to the game because because they deleted add-ons, right? Like you couldn't do that timing game with Weakauras or whatever. I think that's a pretty bad case. I don't think it's a very good argument that is that that's sort of true. And if a designer of World of Warcraft were sitting with me and kind of saying, oh yeah, I would have put this on a fight in, fucking Shadowlands, but I just knew that DBM would trivialize it. I feel like I would just point to 100 other mechanics that they put out. Like the Fate Scribe is the best example of this, right? Like they put out plenty of mechanics that were like this, that even with very powerful add-ons were not able, add-ons were not able to just kind of trivialize that for players. And so I still kind of feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop in a way of like these interestingly designed raid encounters that like you don't need add-ons for. Frankly, I kind of think that actually the thing that happened is raids got more, or like raid fights got more fun for me in a number of places, because getting rid of the add-ons meant that the fights didn't have kind of like an overwrought level of complexity to them, and they could kind of just be straightforward in places, which feels pretty good, right? So yeah.
Yep, I think I mostly agree with that. Yeah, I'm not mad about any of these changes. Yeah, I do think they undershot the difficulty level a little bit with this first set, which I think is probably the right way to go if you're gonna undershoot or overshoot, and you want people to buy into it and not be like, "Whoa, you ruined the game." Then undershooting is the way. Like, it's better to make it too easy and have people be like, "You made this too easy," than have people not, think it gets too hard and being like, "Whoa, if I had my add-ons, I could do this easy," type of deal. So, I think it's probably the right call, but I'm gonna expect them to tune it up in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you that I expect them to tune it up in the future. They've announced that they're tuning things up kind of for next patch, specifically around DPS, where apparently everything is kind of getting like a 25%, sort of health buff in order to make it so that DPS is more important and more valuable, which I think would be kind of complicated for us, but we'll deal with it, right? Like, having to do 25% more damage would have definitely put more pulls of our time into, Lura and Illyria. But anyway, this is a raid review. Let's review the raids. And I guess we can get into it by talking about the Voidspire. Would you consider the Voidspire? That was really like the place where we started. In my mind, it's sort of, I guess, kind of most of Voidspire, then Dreamrift, then back to Voidspire for Illyria, then March of Quel'danas, then Sporefall. That's kind of like, in my mind, what the proper order of events is.
I would just say do Dreamrift first, but
okay, fine. We can just do Dreamrift.
No.
Dreamrift has this big dog. Okay, which is a dog, elk, bug, bat thing, but I call everything, if it has 4 legs and it's attacking me, it's a dog. Okay.
I think it's a Chimaera, buddy.
It is. I get, sure, fine. It's a fucking Chimaera. Okay.
It's named Chimeras.
That is named Chimeras. It has an up phase, it has a down phase, it has these like adds that you have to kill. You have to like DPS them down in one phase and then DPS them down in the other phase. If any of the adds hit the boss, the boss gets a huge damage buff or whatever. Dreamrift is notable for having a bunch of gear that people wanted, like a lot of trinkets that were coming out of Dreamrift. There was one that basically everybody seems to have wanted, but I don't remember the name of it because I got it in the
Rift
second
of
week.
the Onseer or something like that.
Yeah, Rift of the Onseer. I got out of I think I got it out of a box. I got it out of like a time walking box or a dungeon box or something. And it was just insane luck to get, Abyss trinket on heroic from sort of that. Anyway, I don't know. What do you think about this fight?
I thought it was fine, right? Like, it's standard kind of like go down, beat up the ads, come up, like the twist is that you have to finish beating up the ads on the top side, right? Like, relatively straightforward. I don't remember anything being like crazy, right? Like, he flies around, he spits fire on the ground, don't get hit by the fire, kill the ads, and then punch him real hard. And it's a relatively long fight, right? Like, even our latest clears, it's taking more than 5 minutes for getting 2 potion pulls. Yeah, it's fine, right? Like, I think it is in terms of a single boss raid that you can just kind of do, separate from Voidspire, which I feel is like Voidspire is the closest thing to like a normal raid, right? Like as we would historically have understood it. So like it's kind of like, oh, we can just do this, or like, you know, if we are feeling bad about Prague, we can hop out and do Chimaeras, and you know get and you know the fact that it had some valuable loot on it, like get some drops, you know, get that down, feel good about ourselves, and come back if things are really stinging, and like also like a thing that we could tackle pretty quickly. I thought it was fine. I don't think I've got like strong opinions on it. I don't think it was the best fight or the worst fight.
Yeah, I also don't think it was the best fight. I also don't think it was the worst fight. It's kind of just enough. You know, there was a little bit of tech which, you know, required us to do stuff around how we were holding and blowing our cooldowns. We had a number of cool pulls where we got it in the last like percent, and that's sweet. You know, we got a couple of heartbreaker pulls where the boss flies up into the air at 0%, and you're just like, oh my god, it's gonna land and kill all of us, right? Like, you know, like that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't have anything deeper, complex to say about Voidspire, really.
Yeah. Just a quick correction. It's Gaze of the Elnseer, not like Rift of the
Gaze of the Elnseer.
Yeah, whatever I said. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you have
the
as a resident lore expert, do you have any thoughts about the lore of? I feel like of the four, this and Sporefall are kind of like the most separated from kind of like the core plot line of the expansion. How do you feel about the lore of?
Quite bad.
Oh, okay.
I think it is. There is real lore for Chimaeras, but it is locked behind the weekly quest in Herendar, which I have not even fucking finished because I find it so deeply boring. I don't know. I really hate Herendar. We talked about this a couple of months ago in terms of sort of like patches. Herendar kind of missed for me, and so making this, you know, not just a boss fight, but like a boss fight that you have to grind 8 weeks of time gated weekly something in order to figure out what it's doing. It's like, okay, I guess, sure, whatever. You know, that's kind of my feel for it.
I feel like it's a big miss because like you definitely can kill Chimaeras long before you get access to the relevant lore, right?
Yep. And there's also nothing like paying any of it off, right? So for instance, there's the Shulka, who are these hunters that cut themselves off from the, you know, the mother or whatever. They don't show up, they don't say anything. There's like, you know, of meaning. There's just a thing that says, well, you killed him, good job. That like that's what happens. There's a little line of dialogue that says, well, in time, I actually think they say that he's gonna like come back or grow back or something, right? Like, you know, it's like, oh well, in time he's gonna come back, but you know, good job fucking mowing the grass. I guess.
I was gonna use that exact thing, right? Like, which is, you know, considering world events, like, you know, a
little dark.
Yeah. But you know, it's, I don't know. I like got I had to go back and look at the spoilers channel in our Braid Discord where I like made a comment about it. Like, I didn't even feel like the reveal there like was particularly relevant to Chimaeras, right? Like,
yep.
Because I did do it. I did it every week. I know you found it boring. For me, it was the kind of like the palate cleanser in between doing whatever other bullshit I was doing. Because to me, it felt like I was doing a lot of, you know, okay, I am going to go do a hunt and then a delve and then a hunt and then a delve and then a hunt and then a delve, and then I would do that through all the 4 zones before I got custom hunts unlocked, right? And so like, you know, around the 3rd one I'd go to Herendar and it'd be like, you know what, I will do the weekly before in between the hunt and the delve, and that'll be a nice relaxed click on some buttons, learn some lore, right?
Yeah.
I do feel like, you know, like 2 months out now that I have forgotten most of the things that I learned there, because it's all kind of like, you know, Gitchigumi stuff about the Herendar. It's like, and in the past, one of our guys solved violence with peace instead, and it was good. It's like, great guys, fantastic, right?
Yeah, and they never talk in very direct terms about anything. It's all like kind of myth and metaphor, and I'm just sort of like, Oh God, I kind of am not tracking. Who are we talking about again? Honestly,
Well,
I could recite
go.
deep levels of like WoW lore for lots and lots of other stuff, right? You know, even other stuff from recent expansions, right? It is not hard for me to dictate to you what was happening with the spiders in Ajkahet or the Earthen in Dornegal, right? But it would be frankly impossible for me to sit here and explain the like storyline of Herendar from the opening of the War Within. I just find, or I'm sorry, of Midnight. I just kind of find it inscrutable.
Yeah, and these, like you said, it's they're kind of direct story, but they're like they seem like they're out in the way that, like, you know, an African or a Native American legend would be like,
Yeah.
and like, you know, and see the spider or whatever that legend is. My apologies to all those you African lore, you know, enthusiasts out there. You know, like,
Yeah.
you know, did a thing, right? And this is a very metaphorical story. It's that kind of style of story, but I think we're meant to take it as literal because it's World of Warcraft and these things could actually have happened, right? Like, but it's all just the history of this like new, definitely not trolls race, right? Like, and it doesn't seem like it particularly ties into the troll history either. It's just kind of myth making for a race that I don't particularly feel like I need to care about, right? Like,
Yeah, I am sure someone out there is making or has made a videos that is like the Heroneer for dummies. Okay. And I will watch that video someday and maybe I will go, oh, I get it. And I will recite it as lore that I like and find interesting in the same way that I'll like recite 40k lore or something. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like I also find 40k lore to kind of be this level of inscrutable a lot of the time. But like when you read a Wikipedia summary of it, or you have a YouTuber who spends 30 minutes explaining to you how the Tyranids, you know, invasion works or whatever, right? Like, okay, that makes sense. I'm on board. Whatever, right? But I have not seen that video if it exists, and I don't like Herendar very much on its own, and I just kind of breezed past all of it, and that means that this raid in particular sort of just passed me by.
yeah. I feel like, you know, something you've talked about that I think I'm coming around to agree with is that, like, because we've got two loading screen zones, like it feels like basically all of the storylines are disjointed, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't feel like there's a lot of connective tissues between these four zones, and I think Herendar is the worst of these because it just as easily been in the last expansion as this one.
Yeah, that's the obvious sort of thing that is kind of, I think, staring this whole conversation in his face is like, yep, the Heroneer and Herendar really were kind of they were much more built for last expansion. There's a real part of me that kind of wonders if like Koresh and like Herendar switched places, like what would that alternate universe look like? Like let's say that the ultimate patch of the War Within is going to Herendar learning all of this stuff or whatever, I guess, and then something, and then you instead have Koresh, and so you sort of have Midnight where you're doing Koresh stuff, which is Void themed, alongside Voidstorm, alongside, you know, whatever. Maybe you could do a thing where Voidstorm and Koresh are kind of two linked zones because they kind of feel a little similar. I don't know. I would be interested to see how that like counterfactual plays out in a world where like obviously we can play out counterfactuals.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with that. But I think
yeah, we can move on. Let's talk about Voidspire.
Yeah.
So Voidspire is the very first of the Voidspire is the very first of the kind of like story narrative important raids, right? So this is where so for instance, you know, the story leads up to this moment where the Army of Light is going to assault the Voidspire, where they are going to attack and, you know, do something to Xal'atath. I guess kill Xal'atath. I don't know. That part's not super clear, but you know, you're never going to kill the final boss in the first expansion raid, right? The first boss in there was like Imperator something. I'm sure, do you have it up? Aversian?
Averzian. Aversian.
Okay, Imperator Aversian, who has this like little tic-tac-toe mechanic, and it's simple, but I actually like this fight a lot. It's maybe the best opening boss in an expansion or two. I feel like I complained about a lot of opening bosses in the past couple of the past couple of raids. I didn't like the opening boss in Koresh. I didn't like one of the opening bosses in Aberys, or no, not Aberys. Was it the other one? Was it the Emerald Dream? I don't know. There's like one of the opening bosses that I just I kind of didn't super like. But I liked Aversian quite a lot. And I think part of that is just, frankly, it's a tank fight, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just all about, can the tank place themselves in the right location to manage this tic-tac-toe thing? And I was tanking, and that's fun. And that was kind of it.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I found it frankly just kind of like whatever. Could just kind of like slam on things until you need to slam on a different thing, and that's basically it. Like follow the boss around, because you're the tanks are moving the boss, right? Follow them around.
Yep.
Switch off to the ad, switch back. Not particularly compelling on my end, at least. But that's not the end of the world. It was fine. It was. I did like it because it was a good way to get my sea legs under me, since the classes all changed too, right? Like,
right.
And getting my raid rotation under me took me a little bit longer than I expected it to kind of get to the point where I felt comfortable with what I was doing, mastering the new kind of setup, at least for Windwalker. So, being able to have long stretches where I'm just kind of like slamming the rotation is good for that, but also, frankly, I could do that on a training dummy if I wanted. So but it's fine. I'll just say it's fine.
There's no particular loot that I think was interesting.
There was the banner trinket.
Is that good for you? Okay.
Yeah, this is the one that I keep forgetting to hit, because like a minute and a half cooldown, and it's not in front of my face, it's down here, so I need to remember to check it every once in a while and hit it. But yeah.
Okay, I would definitely rank Aversian higher than Chimaeras. It's probably like if I'm doing like a tier list, it's like a low B tier or something, somewhere in the B tier. Next boss was it Voracious? I should
Voracious, yeah.
Voracious is the Godzilla boss. So it's this gigantic Ultradon that shows up. He has little ticks on him. He shoots. He'll like hit the tanks real hard, and then he shoots these big gigantic walls out, and you need to run the ticks into the walls, blow them up before he does this big sweeping like a Godzilla radioactive breath, and he sweeps from side to side. I fucking love this boss just on vibes. Like, I just think it's a sweet like vibes boss, and there is enough happening that it is not fucking boring. There are a couple of there are a couple of just minorly interesting mechanics that just make you think a little bit but not a lot, and it otherwise just feels like it kind of reminds me of like a dragon fight in D&D. It's something like that, right? You're fighting a big dumb monster that is using a breath weapon, and it has a little bit of extra stuff to like handle, and that's kind of it.
I would say like obviously the wall breaking mechanic is kind of the do or die mechanic, but the one that sticks out in my mind the most is he slams his fists on the ground, and he's got like these radiating pulses that once it hits in the center, and then it pops, and then you need to get into the center of it because it keeps going out in concentric rings. That was like the kind of signature mechanic to me, and to my shame died more to it than I should have. But it was kind of like, well, it's like, oh, I got to be on my feet. I got to be paying attention. I got to be moving around. I can't just, brain dead through it. I have to be, have my mind on things.
I also like it a lot as a tank buster, which I think is neat, that he makes very few attacks. Like typically, you have a tank who's just autoing kind of thing. And then every once in a while he does a tank buster, and then he swaps off. Right. Voracious does not have very many auto attacks. He auto attacks maybe 4 or 5 times at the end of every sort of phase, which is actually when he is at his most dangerous, because he hits like a fucking truck, right? But for most of those early phases, he is raising his fists up and slamming them down, and you have a tank who is sort of taking that hit. And I think that's neat. Like, just as a like I recognize that it is not any different than any boss that has a soak mechanic that is sort of like that. But the fact that he is raising up his gigantic fist and then punching me with it, and I am blocking it with my shield or whatever, is like vibes candy.
Okay. Yeah, no, I totally feel that. I will say that I thought like the blow up ticks on the walls mechanic was fine. I think we died to it like once or twice, just because like we kind of relied on people to be like, yeah, just kind of do it, and it worked 95% of the time, except for like the once or twice that's like, oh, everybody decided to pull their ticks to one side, so we didn't get. I think even one of those times he happened to be breathing in the right direction, so we didn't even need to kill the other wall. But that's just the way those mechanics goes. Right? It was fine. It wasn't particularly like there's some of these ads mechanics are like, oh, you have to position pretty particularly. I'm thinking of like the Mugsy fight in Undermine, where you had to like, there were a couple of different, like, you have to position these ads particularly in order to get it to work right. And this was just kind of felt very, very much like a very relaxed version of that. Just kind of like, I got some ticks near the walls, kill them, it'll be fine. And most of the time it was. So, I think this is more of that kind of like undertuning for the first version of these, of the new raids things, where like in the future, I expect them to require a little bit more precision and coordination in order to get it to work.
Yeah, sure. The next boss after that is King Salhadar. So Salhadar, Salad Bar as we call him, was one of the bosses at the end of Koresh. And he kind of comes back in and is killed by Xalatath by, she overloads him with void power, and you have to kite him around to kill him. This boss I found to be tremendously annoying for a number of incredibly stupid reasons that honestly have more to do with me and less to do with the boss itself, but it still is a boss that I don't particularly like all that much. The big thing is that there are little void gates, and he summons an orb, and if the orb hits him, he does a big like raid damage or whatever, so the DPS have to kill the orbs, and then on heroic they have to kill the orbs like one after another for some timer stuff, and there's like goop on the ground.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I found him annoying too, and this is because of other members of the raid more than anything. Just like in the heroic version, in order to be nice to the healers, you need to like stagger the kill of these orbs, and just the insistence of like, wait, hold. Like a couple of times I may have jammed on it hard just to be like, fuck you. Cause like,
yeah, that is exactly how I feel, because there's the part where he does the beams, and right after the beams, he drops a puddle under himself, and there, no matter what, it just takes him a second to get out of that puddle. And listening to players in the raid tell me to move him out of the puddle, like, yeah, I know, guys, I'm doing it. You know what I mean? It is like deep, like, backseat driving almost kind of behavior that just like makes me want to fucking like kill myself. That is, like I said, that's a me problem. I don't think that's actually like on the mechanics of the fight. I tended to find the fight just annoying for a number of different reasons, like that, like moving the orbs around. Like there's goop on the floor. There are these big chain spike things going on, and there's some details about that were like unfun to deal with as a tank in a way that I felt, frankly, I mean, you know what? I will take this L. Like, it is particularly punishing for prot warriors who are bad at mitigating that kind of damage. Other tanks are better at it, and that's just, there's some stuff there. We'll talk about some stuff where I get to do cool prot warrior shit. This is a fight where I got to do lame, I got fucked because I was a prot warrior, and that's fine. That's fair enough kind of thing. I don't know. I never even think I equipped a single piece of gear from this guy, so I couldn't tell you what was on his gear table either.
Yeah, I don't have any particular memories of this guy. I feel like the first three bosses of this raid quickly fell from my memory because they were relatively easy to get through.
Yep.
And it was fun. I think this next boss is where things get real. I would say.
So the next boss is the pair of dragons. There are two void dragons, like Azorian.
Veilgor and Ezorak.
Veilgore and Ezerak. Veilgore and Ezerak are two dragons that you can't tank too close to each other. They have mechanics that are like kind of, you know, negatively complementary in a way, which is to say that they complement with each other in ways that make it hard for the raid. One of them does this sort of like pushback tether thing. The other one creates a big thing on the ground, and you just have a lot of positioning sort of nonsense kind of going on. I actually felt like this boss was quite hard. This is, I would say, the first prog boss. We kind of killed all three other bosses without any issue.
Yeah.
And then we were stuck progging on him, you know, on them for, you know, kind of quite a while. I don't know. This is my F tier. It's my least favorite boss fight in the raid, and yeah,
so it has a mechanic I've talked about before, which is like essentially it is one person gets assigned a mechanic, and if they screw it up, the raid is, you know, the pull is over, which is I believe it's whichever the fucking it's Veilgore. He targets the player and he does a cone breath, and that cone breath will fear people, everybody in the cone, and so the person with it has to run out. And then, like, you know, sometimes the person it's like a person without a lot of mobility and they're just in the wrong spot. Sometimes they're just bad, right? But it's like one of those things where, like, you know, if it gets pointed at the raid, well, I guess that's the pull. You know, fuck it, wipe, let's go. And then it's also one of those things where, like, in order to aim it, you kind of got to move pretty far. And so, like, you know, as somebody with mobility, I'll be like, all right, I'm out of here. And then, like, get feared for like 15 seconds and die because I have ranged the healers. And that's also my fault, but at least didn't wipe the raid, right? Like, you know,
yeah, that is interesting. I agree with all of that, even though this is not why I dislike this boss. I dislike this boss purely on tank stuff, which is, number one, it has the worst kind of tank swap mechanic, which is two bosses that need to be kind of tanked in a very specific location that you need to swap. So your two tanks need to swap locations and taunt in like a very kind of coordinated way. I hate this. I think it's the worst kind of taunt swap. It is so unfun as a tank to try and coordinate that thing, because, you know, I don't have one movement ability, but what I want to do is I want a heroic leap and I want to taunt. So I want to be able to taunt the boss and then heroic leap. But if I taunt the boss and my other tank is not ready, you know, and they have to come over to our side, but the dragons get too close to each other, then that's bad. All of a sudden now the dragons are both buffed and they're going to wipe the raid because the dragons are buffed and we need to pull them apart again. And like all of that, like, I recognize is sort of like difficulty, but it sucks. I think it sucks, right? And then on top of that, it has this mechanic of two guys that need to be tanked not on top of each other, except, and this is the one that drove me insane, they can be tanked close enough that certain classes can cleave on them. So, like, their range to be tanked on top of each other is close, but it's not, you know, it's not that close. So you can still get to a point where two target cleave is working on them, but you can't just tank them both in the same spot or whatever, which was mind-numbingly infuriating. And on top of that, there's a bunch of like movement needs and all this other kind of stuff. Anyway, all of this, boy, F tier boss. I hate it. Worst boss. Maybe, you know, I don't know. I've hated a lot of bosses. I hate this one for sure. But maybe not the worst boss ever, you know.
Yeah, I would say it is not the most annoying boss in the world to me, but it was definitely my least favorite boss of this set, I think. Honorable mention for annoying mechanics goes to the other one. Mr. Collins also hates this boss.
Mr. Collins needs to let you know how much he hates Veilgore and his Zoriak.
Yeah, I think this is an Ezerak mechanic where he like fires a ball across the arena and it's targeted at a player, and it's because it's across the arena, if you stack them, it kind of like pushes into the raid and causes a big problem and won't necessarily wipe the raid, but probably will wipe the raid. But it's also one of those things where it's like, through nobody's fault. It's just kind of hard to like aim that kind of thing across
Oh
a
yeah,
giant boss.
that is that is exactly what happens, because you as the tank, you're aiming it right, but the thing that you have to kind of do, and this was like insane, is because you want the balls to be next to each other, so you need to kind of aim for just past the edge or whatever, and like if you clip, you're gonna hit the thing and the ball is gonna expand or whatever, and just like I don't know, it was easy to fuck that up, and I fucked it up a bunch of times, and I was just like, this sucks. I hate this.
Yeah, a bunch of annoying mechanics.
Bunch of annoying mechanics, yeah. I understand that there's a cool caster trinket in here at some point that people liked. Who knows? Light Blinded Vanguard was the next one. So these are when 3 members of the Army of the Light that you've been hanging out with go fucking bananas, and you have to kill all 3 of them. This is a council fight, so 3 different paladins, and they each map to a different paladin spec. So one of them is Retribution, one of them is Prot, one of them is Holy. You have to bring them all down at about the same, kind of time. They cycle through a bunch of kind of iconic paladin abilities turned into raid mechanics. Famously, I love these fights. I love any fight that is player class turned into a raid boss, I think is great. And is always like an A tier, probably an S tier fight for me, to be honest with to be honest with you, like probably one of my top 2 fights this raid, and partially because I got to do some extremely cool warrior tech, which is I could spell reflect the tank buster, and they never let you do this. Normally they never, because spell reflect just says you're not affected by the spell, or more specifically, a lot of time you get to damage them for the amount that the spell damages you. When I figured out that I could spell reflect the tank buster, I just started being like, no, never touch me. Right? We don't do the tank swap normally. You just leave him on me. And I have to time my spell reflect in very specific windows in order to reflect the tank buster. And if I fuck it up, I die. And that's bad. And I definitely died a couple of times because I fucked up the timing. But it's just like all of that is insanely fun as a tank to like exploit an edge case, get a bunch of damage out of it. Right. It relies on very precise timing. Right. All of that kind of stuff is very cool and very neat and a lot of fun. And so I deeply, deeply enjoyed the Light Blinded Vanguard.
Yeah, I was not as big a fan, mostly because it was a lot of just kind of like moving around, switching stuff like that in a way that wasn't particularly compelling to me, right? It's kind of like, oh, I got to run over to this guy. And also, we got pretty good at it by the end of it, but it's also like, well, they're going to run to a certain place, and then you got to go break the shield and stuff. And it's just kind of annoying from my perspective, but not the end of the world. I didn't hate it. I just also didn't particularly feel like I had cool stuff to do in this fight.
I will also say that the RP was broken on this fight for weeks on end, and I do think that materially harmed. It is further proof in the pudding in my mind of the principle I've laid out, which is that like lore flavor, this stuff does matter, right? Not having the RP, I think, not catastrophically so, but it did measurably, I would say, damage my impression of the fight, because I didn't quite understand what was going on, and you only later like learn that there's this whole thing where they yell at Terralion or whatever. Yeah, so there's that piece of it too.
Yeah, I will say, just from like, we'll do a bigger lore thing at the end of this, but
yep.
I am kind of eye-rolly at this point at like, oh, but then they lighted too hard and they lighted bad, and don't you know that light not always good, guys, right? Like, which they've been on their bullshit for like, 4 expansions now or whatever, but like,
yep.
It just kind of, honestly, the what's it called, the dungeon with the what's his nuts? The
Lithraxian.
Yeah. The Dreadlord, that, him going like that rubbed me the wrong way a lot more than these guys did, but that's just a personal bugaboo. It's just like, okay, I get it, right? Like, they're with the Thraxian in particular, there was a moment he's like, actually, the Dreadlords are always bad. You can't trust them ever, right? Like, which I know wasn't the point, but like that is kind of like, what pinged in my head when it happened, and so that it is what it is.
Yeah, the Thraxian was the weirdest character for them to choose to do that plotline with, especially because he's so pregnant with meaning as a light converted Dreadlord. right? One that we know is like a spy for fucking Denathrius. And it's just like to give all of that up and not even mention, I don't know. It's just very weird. Last fight, Crown of the Cosmos, is Illyria. So Illyria follows Xalatath up to the top of the thing. Xalatath does the same void thing that she does to Salhadar, overcharges her void, whatever, and you need to fight Illyria in order to, I don't know, calm her down or something. I don't really know what I would sort of say there. The fight had 3 phases. You have 3 adds at the start. You kill your 3 adds. Then you do this thing where you are fighting Illyria sort of, she spawns a little shadow clone, and you are measuring sort of like lines and all this other kind of stuff. And then finally you have this kind of burn phase where Illyria is burning platform by platform with pretty simple mechanics. This was an excellent fight. It's, in my opinion, the other S tier fight of the patch. It hits all of the perfect kind of like AOTC sort of flavors of fun fight mechanics that I'm really interested and engaged with, and that, we had to find cool, interesting solutions for, like, okay, how do we DPS this thing down while also managing that? And we have to stack the arrows, and when all of the adds die, that's when we do this and that, and we're going to manage the adds and the taunts in this kind of way. It was a fight that could not be brute forced with like raw DPS. We had to find good strategies in order to get to the other side of Illyria, which I found deeply, deeply compelling. And I just thought the process of progging Illyria was like good hearty raid content. I loved every pull of it.
I think
also I was gonna say, she does the thing that I have consistently praised in good final bosses, which is the final phase feels dramatic, but is actually easier than the second phase, which I love. I think that's great when they can pull that kind of thing off. It's sweet.
I think they learned from Sylvanas that you
true.
have to make that last phase, like, once you get there, it has to be like, you only want to hit like 2 or 3 reps before you get it done. Because Sylvanas was a fucking nightmare.
I also loved that there were lots of callbacks to the Sylvanas fight in this fight. So, for instance, the arrows that she was shooting, that was also a Sylvanas mechanic, though it was kind of flipped from the way that it worked in sort of the Sylvanas fight. And then moving platform by platform as she is like blacking out the platform with her goop or whatever is also a Sylvanas fight mechanic. And I'm always gonna be like into that sort of thing.
Yeah. On my end, I think I agree with you on the substance. I've got some nitpicks. First, I want to say that, like, your description of like, and then you have to fight to calm Illyria down. The intrusive thought that jumped in my head is like, Illyria is hysterical, and you have to, give her a good whooping. What for to show her how to be, right? Like,
bang, zoom straight to the moon with Illyria. Yeah. Bang, zoom straight to the void. Okay.
But just some little annoyances was that I thought the hitbox on the arrows for the initial 3 mini boxes could have been a little bit more generous. The number of misses we had on those for what I thought were like there were a couple of those, like, people screwing up what we're supposed to hit, because, and I put this on our strategy, and that we had the way the mechanic works is that there is a stacking debuff that clears when they get hit with this raid arrow mechanic, but it has to be hit at least once in order to kill the ad, right? In order to strip their immunity. And so the way you do this is you let it stack for a little while. The first boss, you let it stack for a while, and then you only hit it at the last minute, and you do some other stuff with the other bosses to work around it. And like I said, on us, that for some of them, but there were times when people were like pretty well lined up, and they were like half it felt like not super far off and it was just kind of like side by the side. It felt harder to align than I thought it should have been, but that's like this is a minor quibble. And then I also found I found the second phase hitting the, like, there's a similar mechanic for like these little ads, and I found the actual mechanics of how those arrows flew around kind of inscrutable. And whenever it affected me, I just tried to get close to one of them and let it hit them, kind of deal. Because I know it kind of like supposed to like zigzag through people, I think, and then like go off the end of someone, but I never quite wrapped my head around how that was exactly supposed to work. And I didn't find the display, like the actual animations, to be particularly revelatory on how that worked. Like I said, we managed to work through it, and that's maybe more on me than anything else, but it's ultimately nitpicking. What I thought was I also thought was a very excellent fight.
Yeah. Which is a little unfortunate because there are 2 more bosses in sort of like the story tier kind of version of things. So after Voidspire, right, we end up moving to the March on Quel'danas. So the ultimate thing that happens at the end of the Voidspire fight is Xal'atath steals the Naru, the dark Naru that has been hidden inside of Illyria. It is a great kind of plot twist sort of moment. I actually think of this as a very classic Blizzard plot twist, as I have typified before a couple of times on the podcast. Things like Illidan killing Zira at the end of Legion would be another good sort of example of this, right? Or Talanji making the bargain with Bwonsamdi would be another good, another good example of this, of just like times when like the story is really pointing to do one thing and then it kind of does the other thing. This pays off why Xal'atath cares so much about Illyria in the first place. She's trying to get a Dark Naru. You learn that she's trying to get a Dark Naru in Voidstorm. You stop her from being able to do that as part of the questing, but she has this contingency plan to kind of lure Illyria in, fuck her up with void magic, and pull Lura out of, like, I don't know, whatever, out of her fucking soul or heart or something, and use it to open the, I guess, briefly anointed Dark Well. Once that happens, you go down to the Sunwell apparatus place, right? And the very first thing you do is fight the Phoenix Bellerin, who is the offspring of Alar, which is Kael'thas's Phoenix, and the Guardian of the Sunwell, the classic Guardian of the Sunwell. Bellerin is a light Phoenix that has been corrupted with void magic, and you have to like calm Bellerin down by killing Bellerin, but it's a Phoenix, so it goes into an egg, and you have to DPS the egg stuff. This fight was pretty sweet. I like this fight a lot.
I think this is my favorite fight of the set, personally.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like top of A, like this is like an A tier fight, but I didn't quite hit S for me. But
this is kind of, how you talk about, well, like, like they're in like an objective sense, you can recognize things, but you like it better than like you kind of the objective, like that. This is this fight for me, right? Like it is probably not like, like I think Illyria and Midnight Falls are like very good, like you said, like AOTC capstone fights. I just personally like the Bellerin fight quite a lot, right? Like it felt fun tracking things, and like, going into the egg damage phase, just like fucking, slam hams, right? Like knock that motherfucker down, right? It's, I found the stacking mechanic, like the light dark mechanic, to be super fun, and the ramp up in difficulty. So in the first phase, 1 of everything happens. In the second phase, 2 of everything happens simultaneously, and that's like, I think, a nice step up. It's hard to do, and you kind of struggle through it, and then we basically, I don't know if other people do it in 3, because you hit that fucking third, I guess you could theoretically do it. Not fucking happening, right? Like, because if you go past the second one, then 3 of everything happens, right? Like, I'm not mistaken about that.
Yep.
And that's just fucking not happening, right? So, I just had it felt like a great kind of like, opportunities to kind of slant, like you said, the egg being there, you could just kind of do what you need to. You need some light movement, but you mostly just kind of roll face into it, combined with a more intricate, earlier phase. The only minor quibble I have is that there are some weird timing issues if you're going fast but not quite fast enough, and you need to delay killing it. So
I hate any version of things where we have to stop killing the bird because of the 2 ads that are spawned or whatever, which we ended up kind of having to do. Like, that was so fucking lame, and I wish we didn't have to do that kind of thing. But we definitely did. I deeply agree. I think all of that stuff is super fun. I think part of it is that I'm not DPS, so in a world where I'm also, I mean, I was slamming hams a little bit. There's a lot that I did to optimize my DPS. But like as a tank, I'm just not super tuned into that kind of thing. And I bet if I was playing like Arms or Fury or something, I would be like, whoa, about like the, the timing all my cooldowns to come up for the egg phase or whatever. The other thing is that I loved the tank mechanic, but it was definitely annoying because it was a tank mechanic that I was not personally failing, but like other people were sort of failing by not respecting the boundaries. Like I very clearly felt like I kind of was saying things like, don't be in this cone or whatever. If you are in the cone, it is bad. The boss does 50% more damage or whatever. And if I have, and you have to do a snap taunt, you just have to taunt and trust that nobody's behind you. But sometimes people behind you are just like, oh, kill me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I've got, I think there were some aggressive pulls of the sub ad that put people in weird positions.
That's probably true and fair.
But that's that's a minor thing, right? Like, and I don't think it was the wrong call to pull those in. I just think that the positioning of those pulls, because once the ad goes down, you have to kill its egg, and at that point you can't really move it, right? Like you can't even manually pull it a little bit further or whatever. So but that's just kind of the dance, right? Like I also like the opportunities for optimization here, right? Like if one of our paladins got hit with the dive, I'm immuting the dive, stand clear, right? Like that's cool. I like the kind of inverse mechanics, essentially. Like most of the mechanics were like somebody of the wrong color gets targeted with a thing, and then people of the right color have to go save them, right? Like,
yeah, I think that was so cool and elegant is the thing I was really thinking about, which was it was very complex. There was a lot going on there, but it was all really clearly denoted just because it said you are either void or you are light tinged, and you just know, oh, only void people should hit the void balls. Only light people should hit the light balls. Like that kind. That kind of stuff I thought was just very sweet.
You're either bright yellow or dark black, right? Like, not a ton of ambiguity there.
Yeah. And then from there, we moved on to Lura, which is the very final boss of, I would sort of say 12.0 kind of rating. Lura is the Dark Naru in the Sunwell. The core mechanic was around these notes. Lura would flash a bunch of symbols in an order. Somebody would have to keep track of that order and stack 1, 2, 3, and you would have to, and then people would have those marks over their head, and you had to make sure you were standing in the right order so that when Lura's beam hit you, it hit in the right, it hit in the right sequence, which had a nice little chime sound that went along with it when you were doing it. Each of those markers, I call them notes because I think of them musically that way, are these sorts of notes. There were a number of other mechanics that I would say are less crazy than that. There was these, she would spawn these glaives that shoot out. The other big mechanic of the fight is that she would spawn these prisms, and the prisms, you had to interrupt them a bunch of times in order to spawn these light crystals, and the light crystals were useful for sort of later stages. One of the big innovations that we had was only spawning 2 light crystals instead of 5 light crystals in order to progress. I don't know. There's a bit of hitting orbs with beams like in the Demencius fight. There was a bit of cutting off quarters of the room like in the Gallywix fight. There's a bunch of that other kind of stuff.
There's Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles where you got to stay in the torchbearer circle, right?
Yeah, you got to stay in the torch. Yeah.
Yeah. I will I like this fight quite a bit. I don't think I liked it as much as Illyria, Crown of the Cosmos, whatever it was called. I think it did hit the nice kind of and the last fight is actually kind of a neat glide path, that effect that you described. I will say that kind of that innovation of only spawning 2 light crystals seemed almost entirely mandatory, right? I think so. The way the mechanic works is you drop these light crystals. These light crystals are used in the 3rd phase for basically beating back a white mechanic, which we had enough DPS. The reason we could go into that fight with 2 crystals is because we had enough DPS to knock down the boss in that 3rd phase before we needed to pop a 3rd crystal. The way that it worked is when you pick up, if you're holding a light crystal, if you get hit with a void attack, you will spawn a soak that, initially, I think it was 2 soaks, that people need to stand in. Otherwise, the raid takes damage and can very quickly wipe the raid. And sometimes you would like people holding the crystals would be targeted with unavoidable damage. And so you need to drop the crystal, wait for it to go off, and then pick the crystal back up. If you leave the crystal on the ground too long, it starts pinging the raid. And I felt that was just a touch too hairy for what we were trying to do. And it's another one of those things where it's like, you know, in the initial version, there's 5 crystals, right? And once you spawn the crystals, you can't like voluntarily give them up, right? If they're on the ground, they're damaging the raid. Somebody has to hold them. And it's like, if somebody doesn't execute, then it's probably the raid, right? And when there's 5 of those people, it's just like 5 of those people where 2 of them are kind
any
of
mistake.
Yeah.
Comes with this like cascading sort of failure state is so brutal.
And 2 of the 5 are probably ad hoc picking them up. They're not necessarily assigned holders, right? And like, if we had to do it, I'm sure we would have gotten to the point where it's like, okay, you know, I think it was Josh and Sarian were holding where the primary crystal holders was like,
the 5 most responsible, best, you know, players who are not going to get hit by any mechanics or whatever, and they can train on it, kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Like, this historically is the thing that I usually end up doing, because it's like I am not so high on the DPS charts that you actually want me to ignore the mechanics and slam on the boss.
Yep.
But I'm, you know, capable, because I did this a bunch with the seeds in I remember.
Artificer.
Yeah. And I've also got a bunch of mobility as a monk, right? So like, you know, most of these things involve moving around a bunch. And so like those mechanics I think are can be fun, but this was just a little too much. Like I said, I think pulling it down to two crystals was basically mandatory. Although I would have been interested in seeing...
I think I agree with you that it was also mandatory. I like the mechanic in a lot of places. I think the part that bugs me is actually kind of the soak. I sort of just wish it did like, you know, you could imagine a big raid hit, but not a like game losing raid hit where people who do get hit by the void thing, you know, you can imagine a world where it nukes the raid for, let's say, 20% of everybody's health, right? That's a big damage phase. People are kind of low. Taking an extra 20% of damage across the whole raid is really bad if somebody kind of like fucks it up. But there's this extra thing of like, you are trying to position and move, and then it spawns a thing that requires extra positioning and movement that I think actually is much more difficult to deal with under the circumstances, right? Because now you are trying to manage a soak at the same time that, you know, you are also trying to like dodge all of these lines and beams and all of kind of the rest of it. I would say I really hated Lura, and it was because it was as a tank fight, there was nothing. This fight was completely the most boring, uninteresting, nothing going on fight in kind of, I don't know, man. It's the worst fight to tank that I've ever tanked in a long time, maybe. It's just a tank swap, and it's not even a tank swap that if you fuck up the tank swap, it kills you. Frank and I were constantly fucking up the tank swap. Basically, what it did is Lura hits you with a bolt, and every time you get hit by that bolt, you take 10% more damage, and she hits you with 5 bolts at a time. So she goes bang, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Now you're taking 50% more damage, and then the next one she'll go 50, 60, 70, 80, 100% more damage, 90, 100% more damage, whatever. And I could take 10 bolts. And so could Frank. So even if you fucked up the tank swap, as long as you did not fuck up 2 tank swaps in a row, there wasn't an issue. The glaives weren't an issue. I got hit by the glaives all the time. I just stopped caring about them. I frankly, you know what? I will say it. I was spitefully holding the boss in places where the glaives were going because I couldn't be asked to move, and I found it annoying that people kept saying, watch out for the glaive in melee, as if we're all not watching the fucking store, the floor or whatever. There was just nothing, like, there were beams, you have to move the boss a little bit around the beams. Okay. You have to aim the boss into the center so that the beam starts in the center and then rotates. Okay. Like, all of that stuff is just completely non-brain, zero brain power is, kind of entered into any of this. Um, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say about that.
No, that makes sense. I did think the final phase is kind of like I don't know how I feel about these shoot beams at moving orbs mechanics that we've seen in the last expansion. This one, I thought it was at least a neat little twist that you wanted to be in the first one, like even if you weren't targeted, like to reduce damage, like. But like they feel a little too like the hit boxes were pretty generous, so I think that ended up working out.
They also had a visual indicator when you were gonna hit one. Like if you had your beam over the orb would start sparking with like void electricity, and that's nice actually because it tells you that you are on track to sort of hit one. But I hate these mechanics typically. I just think they're very bad.
That combined with the other part of it is that like you want to balance them because there's like this weird gravity effect. I think there's one too many things going on there. Like if the ball stayed still, or if like there wasn't the gravity effect, I think it'd be fine. I think there's like just a little too much, and it was kind of demoralizing when and it felt like it's like I think maybe kind of you could survive if we left one orb up. You really needed to hit all of them, right? Like if it was close enough that we wouldn't immediately wipe, but I always felt like we should have just fucking wiped, right? Because we're not surviving this thing. And
and then it goes into that very final phase, which I think does the thing that I like, and I will give it the fight credit for that. Where it was actually quite easy, but it seems hard because of the stuff that's going on. You have to have this this crystal zone that people are very tightly packed in. Okay, right. She spawns the constellations, which I think is a neat visual. Like it looks cool, but it's actually kind of nothing besides that. I actually found it actively annoying because I don't think it was clear when the orbs, like it never really mattered. We typically were killing her after, or him, I don't know, killing them before it mattered, right? But there were a couple of times where I thought I was safe in between two orbs, and then a beam spawned on me. And again, I'm a tank and it didn't kill me, but it just did a bunch of damage. And I was like, oh, I thought I was fucking safe. This is sort of stupid that, you can't see when the beam is going to connect two orbs. You just kind of have to intuit that. But even then, I don't care. Like, that stuff doesn't matter. The problem with this fight is there was just nothing for tanks to do.
Yep, fair enough. All right, then we can move on to our last boss. Rotmire.
Do you have any thoughts just quickly before we move on from March of Quel'danas? Do you have any thoughts on lore stuff?
Oh yeah, lore stuff, right? Yeah.
I will say that this cutscene is a lot worse than the other previous one.
What you don't like? I felt like there were a couple of like Chimaeras where it's kind of like far away from like the actual like the setup plot. Like I expected fucking Auntie Sylvanas to show up, right? And she did. I had some joke about like the name of the light well because they rename it, right? Like, and I can't even remember.
They rename it to the Dark Well, and then afterwards they rename it to the Dawn Well. I think is what it is.
Yeah. And I had some joke about something that I can't remember because I thought it was dumb, but it's fine, right? Like,
yeah, the Illyria one is great because it was set up in a way that I think was really interesting and compelling, right? You have your clear thing of, okay, here's a detail about Illyria's past. They mention it a couple of times in the dialogue. So it was a plot twist that was easy to predict in the sense of if you're paying attention to the quest text or the dialogue or what you're doing, right? Like I understood when I was in Voidstorm and I was like, oh boy, a couple of quests ago, somebody mentioned, wow, isn't it crazy that Illyria actually has a dark Naru inside of her? And now we're doing this thing. Xal'atath wants a dark Naru. It's easy to put that together, right? But like, it's just enough that people would have missed it, that it feels like a plot twist, essentially. And it was a big raising of the stakes. You summon a dark Naru. Apparently that's what Xal'atath wanted the whole time. She shoots a beam with the Voidspire. That doesn't make a ton of, the mechanics of a lot of this don't make a ton of sense to me. It's very vibes. But okay, she shoots that beam out of the void storm and into the Sunwell, and it turns the Sunwell into the Darkwell. That's bad. And now Lura is here doing the Darkwell stuff. The Sylvanas thing I just thought was kind of like, what? Who? Okay, I guess. You're here now? All right. Like, obviously I did the questing with Erator at the end of the last expansion, so like it was set up in a way that makes a certain amount of sense. But just Sylvanas showing up and shooting Xal'atath ineffectually with an arrow, and them making, shaking their fist at one another, just was not a very compelling end cinematic for me. But
yeah,
hey,
I was kind of waiting the whole raid for her to, for Sylvanas to answer the hero's call, I guess.
Yeah. I was hoping that Sylvanas would stick around. That was the thing that I thought would have been most interesting. Sylvanas shows up, does this thing, and is now part of the questing experience going forward. Great, now I get it, right?
Sure.
The cinematic is about reintroducing this core lore character back into the plot threads going forward. But the fact that she showed up and then disappeared in the same cinematic that's the part that I think felt kind of ass-pully a little bit. And then the other thing is just this like, of all times for Sylvanas to show herself, Sylvanas didn't show herself when her sister was getting berated by the Void. Sylvanas didn't show herself while we were fighting Lura, right? She just shows up at the last second to, I guess, save her nephew from Xal'atath. I kind of feel like Sylvanas was just like a big distraction, and the cool thing that should have happened here is Xal'atath saying, well, you defeated Lura, but I just, teleported an army through Lura's beam into the heart of Azeroth. So see you guys in 2 patches. Peace, deuces, right? Like maybe that would have been the straightforward answer, but I think it would have been kind of better than what we ended up with. But hey, I guess that's that.
Yeah, I feel like this is maybe a consequence of there being a bunch of like intermediate nonsense in between March and when is like the next real patch coming, and what doing, and is it Trolls
in August, and it's Trolls. It is Zulaman stuff. So it's called the Curse of Ulatek. There's that island, the end, Zul'Jin is looking out at that island across
that island
the way.
that if you fly to it throws you away. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That island opens up. Ulatek is not a Loa, actually. It is a Chimaera, like Chimeras, that the trolls summoned from the depths of Herondar in order to fight a Black Empire like general. So this very powerful sort of void creature Kithix is like imprisoned with Ulatek, and Zul'Jin, I don't know, is doing stuff. But it's, I don't know, it's snakes, it's Loas, it's trolls. It seems pretty unrelated to sort of Void stuff, but I actually like that. I think that's good. We sort of did it with Undermine. We've also done it in other places as well. Like there have been, I kind of want to say plenty of WoW storyline like patches that do this sort of thing. Throne of Thunder is the obvious example, where it's just like, oh, I guess we're doing Lei Shen. You know what I mean? Garrosh is the big villain doing Garrosh stuff, but we're all just gonna kind of like, okay, cool, we're gonna go fight Lei Shen, I guess. Okay, you know what I mean? Like that stuff happens. We're doing Trolls WoW,
now, factory meme, right? Like,
yeah, like exactly. And so people are mad about it. I think that's dumb. Frankly, I love it. I love Trolls. I'm probably gonna. I will call the shot that I think I will like this patch more than the other stuff, just because getting to tell this little self-contained story, I'm sure, is gonna be a lot of fun. You're gonna get a lot of, I don't know, interesting stuff. Zul'Jara and Zul'Jin are, I think, are the most interesting kind of characters that they introduced. Zulaman was the best questing, so it's like all of that stuff will kind of come down together to be fun, and then we'll do 12.2 is gonna be the heart of the world or something, and it's gonna be us fighting Xal'atath in the, I don't know, the world soul or something. Who cares? And we'll see where that kind of stuff goes. But I don't know, the lore, the Lura, the end of that Lura fight. Also, for by the way, my other thing about Lura's motivations are bad and sort of terrible. Lura says a bunch of stuff that I think is sort of stupid and dumb, and doesn't track. Why does Lura want to help and assist Xal'atath? How do Dark Naru work for the purposes of any of this. None of that is explained. What, like, Lura, to the best of our knowledge, was just imprisoned in Illyria for a long time, but like wasn't even really kind of. I don't know. All of that stuff is very weird to me.
She's
How does
bad
Lura?
and she's helping the villain. What else do you need to
Yeah,
know? That's
Lura
kind of
gets
what I got a bit.
pulled out of Illyria, shoots the thing when that happens for reasons that don't make any sense, and then defends the Darkwell to their death. I don't know. None of that made any sense to me.
I mean, the impression I got is that Illyria's been suppressing Lura, right? Like this whole time because Lura, and obviously I don't know the lore here. So, but the impression I got, with like the vibes I got, was like Illyria's been suppressing Lura. Lura obviously doesn't want to be suppressed. And then Zalatath frees Lura. And it's like, sure, let's do some shit, right? Like, and
yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah,
right?
I wish they just had some dialogue to that effect. You know, you can imagine a thing where Lura is freed and says, you know, where am I? What am I doing? And Zalatath points at Illyria's like defeated body in the center of the thing and goes, I just freed you from that person. And Lura goes, you freed me from my prison. I'll do whatever you want, or something. You know what I mean? Like some just 3 lines of justification will get you there. But I never quite got there. Anyway, whatever, you know, it's good enough. Final boss comes out just recently in a raid called Sporefall. The fuck is that thing called?
Rotmire?
Rotmire? Is that what his name is?
Yeah.
Okay, is Rotmire. I don't know what this boss fight is. I like it, to be fair. You know, it's like a B boss fight. It's not terrible. It's kind of crazy that this is like a special thing that like, ooh, we're gonna introduce one more boss for you guys to do some prog on, but he's really fucking easy and has kind of like, it belongs to like the first 3 bosses of Voidspire probably have about that tier of mechanics. But also at the same time, I don't hate that. You know, I had a fun time fighting it. It was kind of interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, so my I thought it was fine, but like it's also like, who cares, right? Like it's like I'm mostly geared up. It's a nominal gear increase, but like to do what, right? Like I could like increase a slot by 10 levels to, I don't know, for the next patch, by which I will probably replace half the pieces anyway because I'm doing the next patch level of gear anyway. It doesn't feel like there's a thing to do. And it came so late, right? Like if this was like 2 weeks after Quel'danas, right? Like maybe putting it in the loot pool for my vault would be valuable, right? Like that is where I find like the problem with the AOTC boss, not problem, but like the thing with the AOTC bosses is once we get it, right, like we kind of fall off of them pretty quick, and like usually I'm not getting the loot out of it, or I might not get the pulls I want, but like if I do enough stuff, right, it'll be in my loot pool in the vault, and I can pull the pieces I want out of there. Fuck with Rotmire, right? Like, you know, I'm spending all of my cores because what the fuck else am I gonna do with them? But like, I don't actually need any of this shit, right? Like, if tomorrow, you know, Saren said, actually, fuck this, we're not raiding until the next patch, I'd be like, fine by me, right? Like,
yeah, I agree with you quite a lot. I feel like there is a different world where I do care about this from the perspective of, you know, like 2 or 3 expansions ago when we're really struggling to get AOTC, injecting a bunch of power on a mid-level boss to get us over the hump, I actually think would be great.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, especially
absolutely.
Lura got a bunch of nerfs. We killed Lura before the nerfs. You know, we have been getting pretty good recently about doing doing stuff.
Yeah, if it's instead of like this stacking, like, you know, weekly power, right?
Yeah.
We just got like, here's a new boss. He's got higher level gear. he's
Yep.
relatively easy. Go kill him and use that to get your AOTC if you haven't gotten it already, right?
Yeah, like just this loot pinata where you just get a bunch of really powerful gear that is like intentionally tuned up. This is the thing that really, you put a ring on there, which they have, right? A ring with a bonus effect that is good and is going to be on everybody's BIS list now, right? Like I think that's actually really clever. I would really love that. I think that's really like sweet. Help people get this kind of end of season sort of last second push and move on to the next patch kind of thing. I would kind of be into that. But because we are not in a position where we need that sort of thing anymore, it really falls flat for like us. And I guess theoretically out there's going to be some raids who do need that final push kind of action. And I wish them the best of luck with Rotmire, but I don't know. It's not really us, so I don't care.
Yeah, maybe that's the answer. It's just not for us. But
yep,
it's not like we're like super high. I don't know. Is this maybe for like casual myth? As casual as you can be, mythic raiders, but like lower level mythic raiders that are looking to try and get like that before the patch rolls over, and this will help them. Sure. I don't know. I'm actually getting to the point where like if I don't see us ever doing this, but if Sarah's like, we're going to try Mythic at some point, I'd be okay with it.
Whoa, I actually do want to do it for the Flex Mythic. Rotmire is a Flex Mythic thing. And I actually think that we could probably pull people, right? Like, it's interesting because I think if we were to go, let's do Mythic, and then we like really fought to get 20 people all online and really confirmed who's going to be there and who's going to kind of do what, that would be pretty, interesting, at least for, a couple of polls at the end of the season. I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah, I actually forgot that you need like the set raid size for that, which is its own fucking problem. But like,
yeah,
I don't. If we could flex into it, I'd give it a shot. But
yep.
But that's basically it. So what do you think of the new kind of like split format for the raids?
I like it a lot. I wish it was telling a better story, frankly. But I like it a lot. The split format, I think, lets them do this thing, which they used to do, I think, kind of effectively, which was, they would kind of gate bosses. So I think way back, when I was progging Wrath of the Lich King, they released 4 bosses at a time with like months in between, right? So we did the first 4 bosses of Wrath of the Lich King for like 2 months before the next 3 bosses release, and then for another 2 months before the next 3 bosses, and then, the Lich King himself was kind of released. And the thing that I like about this is like, obviously Icecrown Citadel is built to be the big spire. The Lich King is on top. You're going to fight the Lich King, whatever. But I would kind of love a version of maybe the more modern example of this would be Tomb of Sargeras, which was the 7.2 Legion fight where you killed Jaden, right? When that raid came out, you could not kill Jaden the week of. You had to wait a week sort of after, and you don't kill Jaden in the raid. You kill Jaden on a fucking flying saucer thing that's like zooming through the sky or whatever. They very easily could have made that a different raid instance, right? That unlocks after you complete the Tomb of Sargeras. And I think this is kind of a more modern version of that is, kind of more advanced in terms of how the instance is sort of structured. But it lets you do so many things really neatly. Number one, you don't need to worry about skips all that much because if you put the 2 hardest bosses in this time-gated thing that is 2 weeks after whatever, you just walk into that dungeon, right? I love that, right? Like, I love that we don't have to negotiate around, who has a heroic skipped or anything along those lines. We just, we all just have a heroic skip for March of Quel'danas just kind of at all times, and it comes out 2 weeks later because of just like the nature of this kind of stuff, which I think is really neat. Another thing I was thinking about when it came to, to sort of the way that this stuff is sort of structured, is it gets you the Anduin effect, which I really loved from Shadowlands. One of the things in Shadowlands that they said is that they designed Anduin like a final boss, right? So that you had 2 final bosses in one raid. You had Anduin, and then you had the Jailer or whatever. And I really felt that at the time. And I thought that was really excellent sort of design. And they very clearly did that here. Illyria I mean, I obviously rated Illyria as my favorite fight of the patch. Excellent final boss fight. Has final boss fight energy. Has a cutscene that play. Like all of that kind of stuff. Beautiful. Excellent. I think it's great. And so I don't know. I like splitting up the raids for those purposes. The part of this that I really hate and think is just bad is Dreamspire, or is it Dreamspire? Dream Rift. Dream Rift and sort of Sporefall. These nothing raids that have no significance to the plot or story. Like, just give me something here, right?
Yeah, we skipped over what is the lore of Sporefall.
I don't know. I don't even know. If there is lore of Sporefall, it is completely lost on me. But like, you could imagine a world where both Dream Rift and Sporefall are completely different bosses, but with the exact same mechanics that are taking place in Zulaman, and you are doing them with Zuljara and Zul'Jan, and they are foreshadowing for the 12.1 troll patch where we're going to go do Curse of Ulatek, right? So you have sort of an A plot B plot thing happening. I'm touching base with these people in kind of end game content, so outside of the leveling, we're getting back into it. We're setting up that that to me is really perfect, right? It looks like that's probably going to happen in the next raid, because people think so obviously I described Ulatek and Kithix. Ulatek and Kithix is lore we know. It's like in the game, sort of like right now. Ulatek and Kithix, it seems like we're both imprisoned together. And so if the story of 12.1 is Zul'Jan freeing Ulatek, it's probable that Kithix is going to come with Ulatek, or that killing Ulatek is going to break the prison for Kithix in a kind of Yogg Saron scenario, something like that. Anyway, so I think it's likely that Kithix is going to be a single boss fight that is probably going to answer this void thing that we were talking about a little bit earlier, where it's like, what's happening on the void side of things? Well, the answer is probably going to be something along the lines of, Kithix has returned and is trying to join up with Xal'atath's forces, and we're going to use Kithix to piggyback to wherever Xal'atath is, or something like that. I don't think that's true, but I'm just spitballing, kind of thing. That would be perfect, right? It would tee us up for the next patch instead of having that next patch kind of come out of nowhere. So if we continue with the split format, I think that's a great idea. But the single boss raids are the ones that ought to change the most.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think I kind of buy into the theory that these are like test beds for like whatever the kind of like world Q boss thing that you were talking about.
Yep.
And maybe that's just the price we pay, is having two weird one-off bosses. But yeah, because like the world bosses, like, fuck if I know if they have any lore. They just seem to be kind of like big things that walk around that you kill if you want to, type of deal.
True.
Yep. I don't know. I don't really got anything else. Anything else you want to talk about the raid before we?
I don't know. Yeah, that's my. I don't think. Where would it lie in terms of better or worse than previous, recent sort of raids? I think I liked it better than Manaforge Omega. I liked it better than Undermine. I obviously kind of famously hated Undermine in a weird way. It's maybe below. I liked Emerald Dream more than this. I don't know. I'm trying to think. What are the other raids that came out recently?
No, I thought it was fun. I'm not gonna do a stack rank because I don't frankly have the mental bandwidth to figure out how much I.
Fair enough. You know what? Fair.
It was good. I felt good when I beat the final boss. Thumbs up. Actually, no. I felt good when I beat what's it called? Crown and Nightfall, or whatever the
Midnight
fuck.
Falls, yeah,
Midnight Falls. I felt nothing when I beat Rotmire, but that's fine.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess how was your week?
How was my week? Pretty good. I don't know. I haven't been doing a lot. You know what I did was I watched all of Big Mouth, the Nick Kroll animated show. I have watched it through about a bazillion times, but I never got to season 8, which I think came out 2 years ago or something. As a deep lover of Nick Kroll and John Mulaney, I actually maybe think it's probably some of their worst work, but it was passable as a show I was watching while playing Muntabi or Stellaris or World of Warcraft on my other screen. So I'll give them. I'll kind of give them that. Did you ever watch Big Mouth? I mean, it was discourse like years and years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like kind of gross out humor, and it felt like it was in that vein. So I was like, I just pass.
It is definitely in that vein. I appreciate that they got to take a lot of license with Netflix. Like, I mean, they're showing like kid dicks and vaginas that are doing big Bugsy, Berkeley musical numbers or whatever, which is like a funny bit and like a thing. It's a very musical show, I guess. There's a lot of musical numbers in it. And there are some parts that are just so fucking funny. Like there's this part where one of the characters goes to his grandfather's funeral and has I'm sorry, I was just thinking about it. It's making me laugh. The John Mulaney character, Andrew Glaberman, had previously been jerking off to his hot cousin and he goes to his grandfather's funeral where he sees his hot cousin again, and then he tries to find a quiet room to go jerk off in, and he finds the room with his grandfather's dead body, and then the ghost of his grandfather comes out and he says, "No, I want you to, it would do me a great honor if you did this." And then all of the parents walk in, and it's just so fucking funny that like, I don't know. It's dumb and it's stupid, but the moments like that really, really shine through. And for it, there's that, I don't know, there's that class of Jason Mantzoukas, Nick Kroll, John Mulaney, just like that whole set of people do great work. And it is stupid, dumb, funny, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. That's it, I guess. I would not recommend it for you and for Caroline, I guess.
Yeah, no, I don't plan on it. Yeah. What have I been doing on my end? I've been playing Control a little bit. I've been playing Cyberpunk a little bit again. I'm still in the kind of like I still haven't finished the opening mission that gets Jackie killed. Just because I kind of like wanted to set it up and then go do Control and then come back to actually play Cyberpunk. And then I've also been playing Marathon and Bits. Have I been watching anything particularly good on the YouTubes? I don't know. We were watching the American Revolution series by Ken Burns.
How's that going? Do you have deep thoughts on the American revolutionaries or something?
No, I'm only half paying attention to it because it's like half history I already know and like half history I don't care. And there's like 10% where it's like I just don't kind of care, right? It's like, what was like industrial production like in the North by the women? And it's like, sure, right? Like, I'm sure that's important to some people, but I want to know about people shooting each other in Morristown, right? Like, and there's
this thing that happens in like Civil War documentaries about this. How much do you know about the Civil War? Are you like a Civil War guy?
I know some stuff. I'm not
the fun part. This is so terrible to say. The fun part of the Civil War is all plays out in the first 3 years, right? So 1861, 1862, 1863. But then basically you get to Gettysburg, and then after Gettysburg, kind of the Confederacy and the South are so devastated that like there's just sort of nothing interesting really going on. And also you are no longer doing this like commander roulette, which Lincoln was doing, where he was appointing George McClellan and then firing George McClellan and then appointing somebody new and then he eventually figures out that Ulysses Grant is the guy because Grant is completely killing it in the West along the Mississippi, pulls Grant to come, use the Union Army, and then Grant uses the Union Army as a big hammer to just completely sort of like box the army of, what is it? Richmond or something, Northern Virginia, the Army of the Northern Virginia, kind of in and ends the war through sort of this like stranglehold blockade. They eventually get to a point where they're doing World War I trenches, right? Where the whole sort of war drops to kind of a stalemate as trench warfare completely takes everything over in Northern Virginia, right around sort of right around Richmond. And once you get to that point in the history, it's very boring and not fun anymore because you don't have the big epic plays where, Stonewall Jackson is going to break through on the right flank or James Longstreet is gonna, I don't know, whatever. And so I don't know. I have a similar sort of feeling about that with the Revolutionary War. I feel like the Revolutionary War is interesting with like Saratoga and Ticonderoga and those opening sort of salvos, Bunker Hill, stuff like that. And then it gets very uninteresting. I don't care anymore.
Then I need to ban a spammer.
Okay.
But yeah, I also dropped my water bottle on the keyboard, and I want to make sure I didn't fucking fuck anything up. Okay, we're good. But yeah, no, I'm with you on that. It's the revolution is. I'm more interested in kind of like the Enlightenment, so like the philosophical stuff about the revolution, and then also some of the individual battles. Basically, we're at the point where they're like still winding through like the kind of like B plot of the Ken Burns Revolution War documentary is like Benedict Arnold, is what it feels like.
Really?
Well, because they like bring up Benedict Arnold, and he's been like kind of like building across like the last 3 or 4 episodes, and like. If you put a gun to my head and asked me like specifics, I'd be like, oh yeah, Benedict Arnold was that guy who betrayed the revolution, but that's like basically all I know. I don't know like the particulars. I also didn't know like some of the stuff that I think is interesting is like talking about the interactions with like Quebec and like Montreal and Quebec City that I didn't quite know stuff about, and the battles that were fought there, and the particulars of any of the battles that I find interesting. But it's the thing that has stuck with me a little bit more than it probably should have is just like watch like the historians all feel like they're like there's like I'm calling them like Native American Bruce Springsteen and Timu Cory Booker are like 2 of these like like they just like look vaguely like these people, right? Like there's a black historian, and they're not this isn't saying about anything about the quality of their commentary. It's just kind of like that guy kind of looks like Cory Booker. That guy kind of looks like Bruce Springsteen, except his name is like like Joe Blackhawk or something, right? And so like and is talking about the role of the natives. And it's also interesting to watch it with my wife, who is like her degree is in history, and like the Revolutionary War is her area of interest. And so hearing some of her like things that she's pulling out of it and hearing her commentary on it is interesting. But it is a great thing that I can like have on. It's like, what I need to do? I need to do like Duolingo lesson. I can guys kind of do it while we're watching the Revolutionary War documentary.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. You have any plans for the 250th?
I guess not. I don't know. Probably try and figure out what's going on with people. I feel like we did our big plans this week, because we obviously yesterday for the listeners of the pod, we did a big river float, which I confess I was a little disappointed in because it went too fast. We really cruised down that river. I think I don't know. I've been thinking about it all day. Like, we ended up getting on the river very late, like at 3:30 in the afternoon, right? Which
it was closer to 2:45. It wasn't like we did 2:45. Like we did it in 3 hours. I don't think it's quite
3 hours. Okay, that's a little bit better than I thought. But I don't know. I think we can plot all of our friends on a spectrum of like how long is a good float, and I would be the furthest other end. It would be probably me, Sarian, and Rachel, who could have done a 10-hour version of that float or something. And I think that was kind of our sort of like big activity. So I don't have, maybe I'll do a nice like Maybe I'll like boot up Vicky 3 or something and play the US. That'll be my patriotic duty. Or like Civilization 7. I've actually been meaning to go back to Civilization 7 for sort of a long time and have not gotten there yet.
I just watched a YouTube video essay about why Civilization 7 still has problems, right? Which is interesting because like the guy is like, I like this game, I like the iterations, but it is so fundamentally built around this era's thing that like stuff just doesn't work because of the era, because you had to switch to like civilizations were like era locked and they were also divorced from the leaders. Like there's like a Filipino leader who is like the default leader for Hawaii, and it's just kind of weird, but like that's what you're left with because it's like, and like what is it? Harriet Tubman is like she's one of the suggested leaders for like one of the African nations. It's kind of like, it's clearly just because she's black, right? Like,
yeah, I have a lot of criticisms of Civilization, and I really want to go back for the era switching mechanic because I do think it is good in a number of ways. I think the switching civilization thing is actually excellent, right? And they pulled it from a game I really, really love called Humankind, which we did an episode on it, and then I later talked about it a whole lot because I got a whole phase where I put like another 150 hours or something into Humankind. And the whole conceit for Humankind is that you play an ancient civilization and then you do a medieval civilization, but Humankind is chopped up way more times. So you have like early modern, or I'm sorry, like you have like early ancient, late classical, early medieval, dark ages, late medieval, Renaissance. You go through like 8 or 10 different slices sort of along the way, and they don't do the map resets. The map resets are the worst part. That's the thing that really kills the Civilization sort of 7's kind of aging. But the thing about Civilization 7 that kills me the most is the UI. I think almost all of its like basest, corest, toughest fundamental problems are how hard it is to explain what is going on with your cities at any individual time because of the way the UI works. And I don't know that there's ever going to be a good, that's the part that I think is hardest, and I don't know, we'll see. I had really hoped that they were going to add more ages. You end in like a kind of atomic era, World War II sort of thing. But I actually think that you could bring it forward even more than that and have very satisfying kind of gameplay. But, yeah.
Yeah. I have not played Civilization 7 and I don't have any plans to.
The funny thing about Civilization 7 is I think it would probably be better for multiplayer. Like if you and me and Nick and Charles, our crew got together and played a multiplayer game of Civilization 7, it would probably be a better experience than previous multiplayer games because the snowball advantage is kind of gone. The map resets are very good at locking people back in. If you conquer somebody, like half of somebody else's civ in the ancient era or whatever, the fact that there's this hard reset, everybody's back to 0 on their science and all this other kind of stuff, gives people a real chance to kind of fight back. And maybe that's the big mistake, honestly, is sort of like building it that way. Who knows?
Yeah, I feel that.
We talked about this a bunch in the cast. I eventually got really into Civilization 6, high-end Civilization 6 multiplayer meta stuff, which was really interesting, where like the meta game was typically the way they had done it was at the end of the game, you are fighting for your rank on the thing. And one person is a breakaway and they are going to hit either a culture or a science victory. And you leave that person alone and everybody is fighting for second, third, fourth, by fighting these massive wars against each other, basically. But like, you don't want to fuck with the person getting the science victory because you want that person to end the game in it, like, at the right, at the right moment sort of thing. I just think that apparatus is really interesting as like a multiplayer meta where you kind of let somebody just kind of shoot off into space in first place and leave them untouched. And then everybody makes these gigantic armies of tanks and assault helicopters.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I Civilization starts to lose me with the gaminess of it, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
Like this is why I gravitated more to Crusader Kings. Um, and why I gravitated to Crusader Kings over any of the other Paradox games, because it's
Yep.
more of a role playing experience, which is like we've talked about how like solo, I just can't fucking like I can't do Civilization hard difficulties because it just feels like, oh, I'm playing against a board game against people who are cheating.
Yep.
And Crusader Kings just kind of scratches the itch for me being like, oh, it feels like I'm actually piloting a civilization through like a longer period of time. And I like that. Whereas, and I like Stellaris too, but Stellaris feels much more gamey than Civ. And I just never got deep enough into EU or Vicky to like feel those games. It feels
Stellaris, I think, is excellent. I've very recently gotten back into Stellaris after a number of years away, and I think it is really good right now. And part of it is that there's a million DLCs. They've added a ton of content to the game or whatever. But the thing that makes Stellaris so nice right now is, number one, your origins. It's kind of this like. It's almost a little bit Crusader Kings, but like outside of history, right? Like it's this sort of sandbox storytelling machine, right? Where, you based on the parameters that you walk in with, you get a certain sort of level of kind of like events and you're doing stuff. So I played a run where I played, the most military is sort of fanatic purifiers, right? Where you are playing a race that will never engage in any diplomacy. So, and I was playing thermophiles, maybe is what they're called, or something like that, like Vulcanoids or something. That basically like magma people, right? And there is an origin where you start at a red giant that is going to go supernova, and you can stabilize the supernova, but it gives you a bunch of bonuses and stuff like that. And then there is an ascension perk where you can become the Crisis in Stellaris by sending all of the stars into supernova, and you're going to blow the galaxy up in hypothermia, but because your people are Vulcanoids or whatever, you're going to be fine, kind of thing. And I played that run, and that was just like a lot of fun because, you're accessing all these weird little mechanics. I'm never going to touch any of them ever again, where, if I turn a star into a red giant, I can then turn all of the worlds on there. I can terraform them into volcano worlds, and then I can colonize the volcano worlds, right? You can get a special like juggernaut that is about setting worlds on fire so that you turn worlds into volcano worlds so that you can colonize them, like that kind of stuff. And now I'm playing a version where, do you know about Khans and Marauders? Did you ever get to the Marauders DLC in Stellaris? Marauders are just like little enclaves of like big, powerful sort of military ships that you can pay to like go attack your enemies. Like you pay them 10,000 credits and they go fuck up, your rival, for instance, right? Well, there is a thing that can happen, an event that happens called the Great Khan, where somebody unites all of the Marauder clans and they just attack the galaxy and they beat the shit out of everybody. And there is an origin where you can put yourself on the path to becoming the Great Khan. And so the story of that game is, I'm going to be the Great Khan. I'm raiding, I'm plundering, I'm whatever, right? Anyway, so all of that stuff I think is neat and fun. But yeah, that's maybe it.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Anything else you want to talk about?
I guess that's that. I don't know. Do you want to talk about the Commander game? It's the only other thing that's on my mind, I guess.
Yeah. We played Commander last night with my new decks. And I'm happy with kind of how they all played, except for Shark Shredder, but I think that's also just kind of like a consequence of that particular game. And that's the way it goes. But you pulled out some great plays with Marvo. Zuko ended up winning. Zuko with Doran the Wary ended up working, even though
holy
behind on, yeah, it was behind on lands. Yeah. I swear I have removal on all of these decks. It's like it feels like no one played any removal.
I actually had removal, but nobody ever threw big guys for me. I was like planning to really fuck with some of what people were doing, but I don't know. Once I got Marvo on board, nobody attacked me really, and I guess that was fine. I had my big Marvo play was playing Marvo, attacking. I had stacked all of the things just right, and I played an extra turn spell into a Sphinx of the Second Sun, which like untaps all of your stuff. And I had a bunch of kill spells in my hand, but I just didn't really have anything to do with them because nobody was getting aggressive with me at that point. I feel like the most powerful deck on the board was definitely the Iro deck. Woof. That's the kind of deck that, especially in a 4-player pod, I could really see just like run over people.
Yeah, the ally synergies are great, and then like something that we didn't get to see out of it is just like there's a lot of goad in there too. It's like, you know,
yeah,
go ahead and, you know, attack with stuff because you have to, right? Like I liked the thing. So the design for Valakut was like lands are tough to remove. They're like probably one of the hardest things to remove. And so Valakut like doesn't like I hit the combo for Valakut, which is like that fucking
Scape Shift with Head Shredder.
Yeah, well it was head shredder at all, right? Which like
yeah,
I have a lot of like graveyard recursion for land stuff in that deck, and like Head Shredder is just like the easiest version of it, right? Because you don't have to play the lands. You just sacrifice the lands; they come back immediately, right? Whereas like the kind of most of the like, because you mentioned like, oh, you could put this enabler that sacrifices to gain lives, and that's the game.
Yeah, Zurin Orb is a very old card that it's a 3-mana artifact, maybe a 2-mana artifact that says sacrifice a land, gain 2 life. That's all it says, right? It has that activated ability. But because it is just a sack outlet for lands, it goes infinite with 100,000 things, and landfall decks commonly can use it to set up infinite combos. I similarly do not have Zurin Orb in my landfall deck, which is Lord Windgrace.
Yeah, and part of that is that like I don't even think it would be that great in this deck because Head Shredder is the only thing that really turns it on that hard, right? Like there are a bunch of cards that like let me play lands out of the graveyard, but I've got enough ways to get lands into the graveyard that I don't need a dedicated sack outlet for them, right? Like, but it performed the way I wanted it to, so I was happy about it.
That deck seems honestly quite good. When that deck got going, I was like, oh my God, I actually really see how, like, in other games, I think it could play a kind of control where like you're using your Valakut triggers to kind of ping shit out and like lock the board down, and you know, oh, I'm gonna get a double Valakut trigger and kill somebody's commander or something kind of like that. But then, you know, I think you were just playing the burn version of it by just sending 6 damage at Josh's face 2 or 3 turns in a row, and you're just like, whoa, okay.
Yeah. No, I think the like I like the theoretical problem with the deck is that I run out of mountains, right? Like at least a way to play them rapidly, right? Like the commander lets me pick up and drop one at least once a turn, right? So and that is how I imagine using it, is using the Valakut triggers more as like a control thing. But like I had that Scape Shift in hand for a long time. It's like okay, I gotta get to the point where I can like the game plan in my head was always kind of like hold for a while and then do a big move that that knocks people who are already like halfway down out of the game type of deal. It's also got a couple of like enders in there that are like just kind of like dump a bunch of mana into a thing and win, right? Like but like I was telling you, I think before we got on voice or before we started recording, I like to kind of just play with them, like play these decks and like figure out what it needs more of and then like smooth them out a little bit. And so it was cool to see them all in action. My fear was always that like both the Marvro and the Shredder decks are going to be way too reliant on the commanders and be like kind of like what's it called be vulnerable to removal. And so Marvo, I think, was fine, and Shredder just didn't have targets to hit, which was a sad thing there. Because it was doing the thing it was supposed to do. But you know, that's the way it goes, I guess. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, I love that Marvo deck. It's easily a deck I could have put together. One as soon as I started, I was like, oh my God. And then once I was doing the thing of like, wait, hold on a second, I have to plan out 3 turns in ahead, you know, like pulling kind of the things. All of a sudden, boy, did that deck kind of click together. And I have a little bit of experience with this because, so for instance, I pulled off a Sensei's Divining Top trick that I think was cool, and I'm proud of it. It didn't amount to anything, but if it had, it would have been awesome, kind of thing, right? Where you pay multiple times into the Sensei's Divining Top triggers, and then you activate the top to throw it into the deck, and you shuffle it away to try and dig deeper and find something, find something new, kind of thing. And like that stuff is like Eureka tech, because Sensei's Divining Top is also insane in Eureka. It's Sensei's Divining Top is the most insane thing in in that Marvo deck.
Yeah, and Scroll Rack, right? Like I've got a bunch of
Scroll Rack also
yeah.
completely nuts.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in there, and there's like the saving grace I think for Marvo is there are other cards in there that are like you and target opponent reveal the top card of your library and deal the damage of that to your opponent. Right? It's like, okay, that's your like alternate kind of like you can't keep Marvo on the board. That's your alternate kind of like murder.
Oh, I think on turn 2 I played a card that was like, draw a card, clash with an opponent. If you win the clash, return it to your hand. I am pretty sure if I lost it, I spent it on turn 2. I just bet, and I bet wrong, and I whiffed my clash. I think if I had won that clash, I maybe could have had like an insane turn, because Marvel says every time you win a clash, you draw a card, you can play something that's 8 or less. And with the top deck synergies that I had, that would have been like 4 just huge big creatures that I eventually ended up in play over the course of like 2 or 3 turns. But I could have done all of that in one turn if I had that, just that one synergy.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else you want to talk about, or should we wrap this up?
Nah, I think we can wrap it up.
All right. If you'd like to email us about any of the stuff that we talked about in this podcast, you can email us at gmail.com or podcast@playgames.com. Follow us on twitch.tv/games or youtube.com/games, where these go out live. Rate reviews for every podcast. All the links will be down in the description. But you have anything else you're looking to promote?
What did I talk about? Montabi has its release date that just came out, so August 6th. That was, I guess, actually a month ago at this point. And I guess for the next couple of hours, if you are listening to this right when it goes up, you can play in the Airframe Mega City Open, which is a big playtest weekend where we just turned the servers back on and let people come hang out. But otherwise, I think that's kind of that.
All right. Well, then I would say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.